Look, I hate to say I told you so. I also hate to lie, and therefore I'm going to say I love to say I told you so. Go back in the backlogs, folks. Check out episode whatever a couple months ago, right before the playoff game or right after the playoff game. I've been shouting out into the ether for quite some time at this point that the writing was on the wall.
Oh, yeah.
Lamar was not going to be here. It's called just reading the room. Just look, just sense it out a little bit. And I got in a lot of contested debates with people about that, which, whatever. I'm not surprised by this, obviously, and I am not upset about it. Just like I said months ago, I'm not upset about it. I think it was bound to happen. I still stand by what I said. I think that the way that Lamar handled this process was, Lucas Mosca put it the best, a disgrace. It was a disgrace.
I just think he's still so green, and he thought he would be able to just fucking get the money without a legit manager, get the money without a legit agent, all that shit. Mm-hmm. Like, just because he didn't want to have to pay whatever the 10%, 15% on top of whatever he was getting.
Yeah.
And he just thought it was an automatic given. And he held out because he was like, no way they're not going to go with me. No way they're not going to go with me.
I look at it from a business perspective. I understand it because, for instance, if I was playing at a bar and that I found out that bar was paying another band substantially more than they were paying me, there would be kind of a pride thing, but also a business thing to be like, well, look at what I've done, look at what we've done, and why are you saying that we're not worthy of this money when this other band is? That would be a thought that would cross my mind. Absolutely. Yeah. I guess that metaphor kind of goes to the wayside when you consider that in reality, it's kind of like if I noticed that a bar was paying me a certain amount, and then I noticed that another bar was paying another band a certain amount, and then I was like, you got to pay me that amount now. And it's like, well, we're not them, and it's like, I guess that's probably the more accurate metaphor realistically, because obviously no one else has offered him the amount of money that he wants. Mm-hmm. And so obviously there's a mismatch between what he thinks he's worth and what the market thinks he's worth. And that doesn't mean the market is correct, but when it comes to that aspect of the whole conversation...
Yeah, because a lot of people speculating that they're trying to keep overall pay down for players. Like they're trying to make it, the team owners are trying to brigade and keep salaries down.
Yeah.
Which Absolutely. Is I'm sure they are.
That's how everything works. When you go to the store and you see the same fucking charger at one store is $5 less than another store, you're going to probably, everybody wants to say, and now think about 50 million.
Yeah.
You might want to sit down and think about it when you're dealing with $50 million. It's not like they're just giving it away like fucking candy. These athletes are getting paid a tremendous amount. But I also don't agree with people that are like, oh, what? You can't take 250 because, there's people that are barely making minimum wage. It's like, okay, well, that's not a fair comparison either, because if that's what he's worth, that's what he's worth. My issue has never been with his request for money. My issue has only ever been with the people that insist that he is a leader, in that none of the conduct, none of the way he handled this situation was exemplary of what I would consider to be a leader. If he was in these...
And to be fair, I don't think he was ever he was always being positive. He was always, I don't know. He was kind of dick teasing. He was dick teasing the whole town of Baltimore.
And that's what I don't like, because it's like, Dude, first of all, we have, as a city, and there's been critics, including myself, but overall, as a city, Lamar Jackson has been one of the most beloved players, one of the most fanfared players that Baltimore has ever had. The city has had his back. We're constantly, pulling for him, vouching for him, making excuses for him at points. And it just kind of seemed disrespectful from my perspective, from a fan's perspective, that obviously, it was not a good look for him to not even show up to a playoff game. I thought that was a really bad look. And it was an even worse look to not even address it or anything for 3 months after the season. I mean, look, at the end of the day, it's like you can have your negotiations, you can have your discussion about, how much money you want for next season. That's all well and good, but I don't see how that stops you from saying, hey, shouts out to Huntley for making the Pro Bowl, even though that's kind of, at this point, the Pro Bowl is kind of a fucking joke, which is a whole other thing. But like, shouts out to my guys for putting on a fucking good effort. Like, we barely lost that game. The Bengals are one of the best teams, obviously in our division, but in our conference. And like, we probably would have won that game if it weren't for the most ridiculous, like, unlikely fumble on the goal line where it was like we were literally 1 foot away from a touchdown and then fumbled it, and I think they like ran it back for a touchdown the other way or something like that, where they wound up scoring a touchdown. Like, it was this ridiculous play that wound up costing us that game. And like, we really did outperform everyone's expectations. Nobody was counting us in, including Baltimore Ravens fans. Really, nobody was counting us in that game. And we kind of proved that like we could compete without Lamar. Now, we probably would have won that game with Lamar. Maybe. I don't know. But I didn't like the fact that he just kind of bowed out of the whole thing and just said, all right, I'm injured. I'm not showing up to the playoffs. I'm not going to say shit until my contract's figured out. And it's like, all right, man, like, I don't see how the two have to do with each other. I don't see like what your relationship with the Ravens organization necessarily has to do with your relationship with the city of Baltimore. Mm-hmm. You can have your negotiations with the Ravens and still be present for the fans. It just kind of at a certain point seemed ridiculous when like all these fans are constantly, you see these articles, these fucking clickbaity articles that would pop up.
People are like writing fan fiction of like why he's actually the real reason why he's not talking right now is because they're about to sign the contract, and he's trying to keep it a surprise. And Lamar would never do that to Baltimore. So I'm gonna keep my jersey on. I'm not gonna shower. He actually looked at me one time, and I never showered after that because I just want to have his gaze on me for the rest of my life.
Don't want to wash off that gaze. Yeah, it's a sad, I guess, for the city. For some people, it's a sad moment. But look, at the end of the day, these are these moments when you realize ultimately this sport, just like everything else, is a business, and the decisions are made based on business. And no matter how much you want to believe that a player rides for your city and this, that, the third, at the end of the day, it's what they do for a living, and they're going to take the opportunity to make the most money possible. The whole conversation over whether or not Lamar is worth the amount that he thinks he's worth, my personal opinion is not quite, but that's irrelevant because my personal opinion doesn't really matter in that regard. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about when it comes to football any more than any other person does, and I'm not going to pretend I do. The only opinion that I think has any weight that I hold is what I said about the way he conducted himself, because I don't think that you need to be an NFL football player or on the team or any of those things to discuss someone's like relation with the public. And I just thought it was, if I was a Lamar stan, like a true stan, like loved everything he did, I have to wonder, like, at what point, if ever, did you ever start to kind of feel like maybe this shit was getting a little ridiculous? Like, at what point do you finally have to admit, like, all right, how many excuses can I make for this guy before I just say this is kind of fucked up? This is kind of stupid. whatever. So I don't know. But he's out. Who knows who's going to. I mean, the reality is also he might not be out because he requested a trade. Like, that's not really.
I mean, if no one picks him up, like, what happens?
Well, at that point, it's highly unlikely that he winds up playing for us next season because like somebody's gonna want to take up that trade deal.
Yeah.
You know, there's 31 other teams in the league. He is, really truly one of the top quarterback prospects. The only issue is he thinks he's a number one prospect. So it's a battle between number one or number 2, 3, 4 is really what we're talking about. And there's going to be a team that's going to be willing to give up a lot to get him. So it's pretty much set in stone that he won't be playing here. And also, I think it would be an interesting thing to see if by some chance he does still wind up playing for us next year, how he's received by the fan base.
Yeah.
How many people were just kind of checked out and were like, you know what, like, I really didn't fuck with the way you handled that. And like now I kind of like, I don't feel the same way about you this year as I did last year or the year before that. You got to wonder.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely not the golden child anymore.
He's definitely not the golden child.